Today we're going to examine the implications of the comprehensive spending review. There seem to be two divergent schools of thought. One is saying it's doomsday, the other that it's back from the brink of bankruptcy. Now, to analyse this in the implications of the spending review is Professor Joe Nellis. Now, Joe, give us some background. These seem to be so divergent. What's the truth?
Well, there is no truth as such. We had a choice. The Chancellor has a choice. Either cut quick, cut hard, and therefore please the financial markets because they're concerned about the scale of our borrowing, or cut more slowly and in a sense please the trade unions and allow the economy to grow our way out of this situation. But you know, these are hard choices, and many countries face the same choice. We don't yet know if this is the end of the cuts, by the way, and I suspect there'll be more cuts to come, but this is certainly the first stage of this reversal.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about bankruptcy and the way the UK stands out as having such a huge debt. Can you shed any light on that?
Yeah, they keep referring back to 1976. It was the last time we were in this situation, well, the most serious time since then. And we were bankrupt at that time because we had to borrow from the IMF to fund our own spending. We're not in that same situation, by the way. The economy is still growing, although it may double dip as a result of this. But, you know, compared to where many other economies find themselves, like Greece and Spain and Portugal, etc., you know, we're not in such a dire situation. I think there was and still is a possibility for the government to slow down these cuts. You know, they've announced them in a sense to manage expectations. There may be more cuts, but of course if the economy grows faster, then there could be less cuts. In a sense, I think they've given us a picture that's trying to get us to think more realistically about our future. And the next decade, as Mervyn King has said, is what he calls drag, debt reduction, anemic growth. That's the context we find ourselves in. The question is, how quick do you pay back your credit card bill when you've got interest building on interest? That's the problem we all face.
Now, some people are saying, now look, what we're really doing is not massive cuts at all. This is just going back to trend. Other people are saying, yes, they are massive cuts. What's your perspective?
Well, they are massive compared to where they were last year in terms of the level of spending, so that's a fact. They are going back on trend because over the last 4 or 5 years, under a Labour government, there was a significant increase in government spending. That's correct. I think it's more than that. I think there is a bit of a political philosophy angle to this. I think this is the beginning of a degree to which the welfare state and the role of government in society is being diminished. I think you can't avoid that. This is not just simply straight cuts. I think there are political aspects to this, which the government would have us not believe. But I think, you know, when you look at it in detail, I think that is the fact.
Now, as an economist, you're keeping a very close eye on where the economy is going. Some people are fearing a double-dip recession. Other people are saying any cuts that are going on will be absorbed by growth in the private sector. And there seems to be some evidence to support that from the 20-odd businesses that supported the cuts. Now, can you shed any light on that?
If you look back at the history of the UK since the Second World War, we've had 8 recessions. But around half of those have been double dips. In other words, a recession followed by a little bit of growth, followed by another recession. So that is certainly a possibility. It has happened before, and I think it could happen again. It's going to be a very close call. Now, the question is whether or not these cuts are going to force us into a double dip. I think it's very possible. If I'm a betting man, I would say yes. And the reasons are not just about the UK, but about our trading partners, about America, about the other developed economies. There is a 2-speed world economy out there. India and China growing quickly, but the developed world growing more slowly. And we're going to be on a very fine balance in terms of double dip or not. We await the third quarter figures for the UK. And I suspect there will be a slowdown in growth from the second quarter. And then the question is whether the fourth quarter ends us up in a negative territory. It'll be a close call.
Now, one of the watchwords of the budget that was said, innumerable times was the word fairness. And yet we look at the welfare budget and the massive cuts that were going on there. Now, from an economist's perspective, were these cuts inevitable? Did we have to go down this route? Can you say some more about that?
Well, we didn't have to go down this route. There's always choices. I think it is a fair thing to say that this was not a fair budget, in the sense that I think the poorest in society will be the hardest hit. But, as I said already, I think there's a political aspect to this. Without trying to justify the government's politics, I think they are intending to try and get people off welfare dependency. Now, you do that either with a stick or a carrot. I think they've tried to do it with a bit of both. At the moment, it's going to feel like a stick. But that's no bad thing to reduce welfare dependency, provided, as you've implied, that the private sector creates the jobs to get people off welfare. The government has forecast a cut in public sector employment by almost 500,000. Their hope is that the private sector will absorb those jobs. I don't think that will happen, but it may not be as negative as some are saying, because demographically there will be a lot of retirements in the next 4 years in the public sector. That's just a fact of life, and they will not be replaced. So I guess, yes, I'm saying it's unfair in terms of, I think the poor will be hit hardest. At the same time, we've got to do something to reduce welfare dependency, because people need to work to help the economy to grow and to increase their living standards. So that may sound like a typical economist answer, but I think that's where most people will judge the situation to be.
Now, some people are saying we could even get riots on the streets. Do you think that's possible?
Well, it's possible, but I hope it doesn't happen. Having said that, of course, there are examples in France where there's quite a lot of civil unrest, and I think we could face civil unrest, hopefully not riots, but certainly strikes and protests, which has started already. I think that is very possible, and in fact, it's almost inevitable.
Now let's turn to some areas that we understand. Let's look at the science budget and capital projects. They've been largely protected. What are your assessments on that?
Well, I'm not sure they've been protected. I mean, many capital projects actually have been slashed. For example, in social housing sector, a 74% cut in capital projects over 4 years. My concern is not that some of them have stood still and many have been cut. It's that we should be investing more in science and capital projects, because at the end of the day, we need growth. And these are the very areas, just like universities, which create the foundation for long-term sustainable growth. So I'm concerned that we're going to see cutbacks in areas of universities, science, capital projects that actually will slow down our trend rate of growth, which is self-defeating, of course.
Now, education generally has come out of it reasonably well, but the university sector really quite badly. Have you got any comments on that?
Absolutely. As an academic, I've got some comments. Yeah, the UK university sector has been expanded dramatically over the last 10 years under Labour. I think we're going to see some shrinkage. It doesn't mean that some will go bankrupt, although it's possible. I think the university will have to be much smarter in terms of how they generate income. Third stream income, and income from business, from industry, I think is going to have to be increased more and more. I think we're going to see more foreign students coming here, because they still find the UK an attractive place to study. I think it's going to be a challenge for UK students, however, and I suspect we're going to see not a big reduction in the UK numbers, but more about students looking for better value for money, and that will inevitably mean perhaps studying at universities nearer home, because I think the potential is for students to have such massive loans that they will say, we don't want to go. And I think they will still go to university, but they'll be much more selective.
So you don't see a shrinking of the university sector as a whole?
No, because I think the world still regards UK universities as very attractive, and I think we will see a growth, even further growth, in international students in the UK.
So lastly, Joe, if we were to sit here in 6 months' time, what's your best bet about how we would look back on these spending cuts?
Well, first of all, we tend to have short-term memories, although we're going to be reminded of these cuts for a long time to come. In 6 months' time is an interesting thought, because it'll be after the budget. the next budget, and I suspect we're going to see, as I said earlier, more cuts and, of course, more tax rises. So I think we're going to feel the squeeze being a little bit tighter, but we have to accept it, as other countries have to accept changes in their living standards. But the sooner we get through this, the sooner we get to a point where the government borrowing has stabilised and has declined, and therefore we've got more revenue to do the things we'd like to do, then I think we'll look back at it and say, well, was the pain worth it? Now, if I'm unemployed then, I will not say unemployment was a price worth paying. As one former governor of the Bank of England once said, that will be painful for many people. But in general, I hope that in 6 months' time, we will have adjusted, we'll have started to adjust to these measures and achieve some sort of realism around this.
Joe, we'll do that. We'll get back together in 6 months and review this. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.